whatever, you know the song. Welcome back to Extra Holiday Games. I'm Extra Holiday. And I just had a thought. We were talking about the song Stacy's Mom last time. I thought I thought back to my film classes. My film history classes. I was like, oh yeah, that was like The Graduate, right? That was when that mom came out. But no, that's Mrs. Robinson that I'm thinking of, which is another song about a young man lusting after a older woman. So yeah, kind of proved my point from last episode that that is an enduring theme that is not in any way outdated today. Well, okay. Exactly the age of the young man has changed a little bit, but depending on what you're looking at. Anyway, we're gonna move on from that because I said my piece last episode. It is interesting. I did learn a few interesting things from studying film and media studies. I can't say I regret it entirely, even if I would have preferred to study filmmaking instead, but they didn't offer that online, so... and at that point, I was kind of just looking for it to read to finish, so... yeah, I mean, there are some interesting things. Like, I had an entire class based on Star Wars. I'm not even that huge of a Star Wars fan, but I took an entire class on it because it was there. And, like, it's still an interesting series to look at, even if you're not a huge fan. Just from, like, a film history perspective. And looking at, Lucas's other works prior to that. Like, I watched the short film that he made, THX 1138, for that class. And you're like, what the hell is that? It's this short dystopian sci-fi piece, because it's interesting actually to contrast it with that's a one-up. It's interesting to contrast it with the with Star Wars, because Star Wars is kind of a very, very like hopeful, optimistic view of the future, right? Or of science fiction anyway. It's the intro says it takes place a long time ago, but Star Wars is a much less bleak look at science fiction, whereas THX 1138 is definitely dystopian, and it's really interesting to me. It's kind of the sci-fi, or less sci-fi and more just dystopian trope of like, people are being controlled, their freedom is taken away, and one of them tries to break out, sort of thing. That is more or less the theme of the film. Yeah, it's just interesting to see that he made something less, or more serious and more, let's see, high concept, I guess. I think that is the term, but it sounds a little pretentious when you say it. But yeah, he did. He made something that wasn't all pew pew lasers and stuff. And of course, he made plenty of other films before and after Star Wars that weren't Star Wars, but he's definitely most known for Star Wars. So, yeah. And there was that class I took on horror movies, which I think I've talked about before. But it did surprise me in thinking back on it. It kind of makes sense. In that the first movie we watched wasn't exactly a horror film. If you know the movie, Cabin in the Woods was the first one we watched, and it definitely starts out a lot like a horror film, but then you get to a point and it's like, oh, this is This is playing off the tropes of the horror films. This is satire of horror films. I see. Okay. And eventually you get to points where it's like, okay, this is funnier than it is scary. Which, funnily enough, is actually what Jacob told me way back when he first saw the movie. But I was convinced that it was just straight up a horror movie. Which I'm generally not a fan of. But yeah, way back when, Jacob was like, oh yeah, we should watch Cabin in the Woods. And I'm like, no, that sounds scary. I don't like scary. Still true, I'm not a huge fan of horror films, but I do have slightly more appreciation for them after taking that class. And the themes they often portray. And the tropes that they have. Like, I think Cabin in the Woods was probably the correct movie to introduce people to horror films and the themes in horror films with, because it actually directly addresses some of those tropes that are so common in horror films, like the last girl trope, basically, which is like the purest maiden is always the one who survives to the end, right? Right? And it's like, if you think about it, it's basically, a lot of horror movies are basically shaming people who have sex. Because the ones who have sex always die. Or the ones who are flirty, or the ones who, you know, it's like, it's interesting to look at, really. It's really... There, we also looked at, like, the reasons why horror films tend to be more popular among women. And there's this idea that, like, a lot of the times in horror films, the dangerous presence that is there is female rather than male. Which is an interesting trend. And there's the idea that, like, oh, it's actually kind of like a power fantasy for women. It's like, oh, interesting. And there's also the aspect of, like, you know, it gives horror films give an excuse for intimacy, which I guess is, you know, more of a female thing. I don't know. At least that's what they were positing in class. You know, physical intimacy, not like sex, but like, you know, you're cuddling someone when they're scared, right? Right, you know, the classic trope of the girl in the theater in her boyfriend's arms, shivering in fear. That idea. There's some interesting stuff, even if to be learned in those sorts of classes, even if it's not always the most practical. I don't know. I think mostly it's just, it's an interesting perspective to look at things from, you know? I think ultimately that's probably what I got out of those classes, just a different perspective. Which is neat, actually. I genuinely feel smarter for having taken those classes. So, yeah. And of course, I'm not the type to laud that over other people, like, oh, you haven't taken these classes, you don't know anything. But I will acknowledge that, you know, there are people out there who have not been exposed to those sorts of ideas, you know? Yay, that's fantastic. Let's keep doing that. And those people can oftentimes have different views as a result. I think I said last time that I wasn't going to get as deep in this episode, but I guess that was a lie. I don't know, I'm just feeling very chatty today, I guess. Today might have been a good day to stream. Oh well. Hopefully you all don't mind these more talkative episodes where I'm less focused on the game and more focused on just whatever's rattling about in my head. Because honestly, I enjoy doing these sorts of episodes. It's funny to think that at one point I specifically tried to cultivate this sort of thing, because honestly it comes kind of naturally to me, but not trying to brag, but like the fact that I didn't even celebrate getting that one up earlier. No, it's fine. Yeah, honestly. Here's the thing, I realized recently, like, what exactly it is. Not necessarily exactly, but one of the things that I find that I like about videos like mine, you know, Let's Plays, stream VODs, things like that. You know, content where people are playing games and talking over it, basically. For me, I realized that it harkens back to the days where I was over at Jacob's house every weekend and we would play games, and we wouldn't necessarily always be playing a multiplayer game. Sometimes, you know, one of us would be playing a single player game and we'd just be chatting along in the background, or with the game in the background, I should say. You know, we're just, you know, BSing, as they say, while the game goes on. And that, I think that's honestly where a lot of the appeal for Let's Plays and, you know, stream playthroughs and stuff like that comes from. Because it can feel like you're just hanging out with a friend, you know, and chatting about whatever and watching them play a game, you know? That's I think, the appeal. And so that's kind of, whoa, I thought that was going to go in the hole. That's kind of the, it's kind of what I shoot for nowadays. It's that feeling of like, yeah, we're just hanging out, chilling, playing a game, talking each other's ears off, you know? Well, okay, in these videos, it's more like I'm talking your ear off, but in stream, you can talk my ear off. As long as you're not, you know, too egregious with the spamming, because I will ban you. Don't test me. I ban people. I have banned people. Actually, I think I've only banned one person at this point who wasn't a bot. And it's because they were being really, really insistent about me, like, I think I was playing Mario Maker and they were being really insistent about me playing certain levels, and I was like, and I gave them several chances. I was like, hey, you're kind of pushing it right now, buddy. I've told you what I'm doing for this stream, and you keep pressing me to do something else. So if you don't stop, I'm gonna have to do something about it. And they didn't stop, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to ban you. Didn't feel good, but I warned them, so can't say it wasn't fair. But hey, maybe it'll be even more fair next time. Because, as for this episode, that's a wrap. Don't go annoying the streamer, alright?